Hello! So this video is going to be about the mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is kind of my dog's barking, unfortunately, it's something outside, so you might hear barking occasionally in the background. I apologize. The dog barks. Anyone that has a dog is aware of this. They bark at whatever they want to bark at. So I apologize if that ends up in the sound. If it's too loud, I'll try to edit it out, but at the moment, that's what we get. Uh, so the mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and I've gathered up quite a few bears and a tigger in order to help us. So we've got Stuffle, Cub Chew, Teddy Ursa, and then we've got a tigger and a snowball, and then we've got a white winterish Christmasish version of Winnie the Pooh. I also have a Winnie the Pooh with a snowman shirt, and I have two Winnie the Pooh books. This one is pretty much kind of a transcribe of the movie, and then that one's just another one that's about Winnie the Pooh, One Special Tree. So it's a book about trees in the 100-Acre Woods and how you should respect trees and that type of stuff. So The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is a compilation movie that came out in 1977. It is a compilation of three different little episodic specials that they had done that aired in theaters. The first one is Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, which originally came out in 1966. Then there is Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, which came out in 1968. And then there is Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, which came out in 1974. The Winnie the Pooh movies are, of course, specials and movies are, of course, based on the books by A.A. Milne, who is a British author who wrote the books based around his son, Christopher Robin, and a stuffed teddy bear that he had that was called Winnie the Pooh. And then all these other little stuffed animals that they had for Christopher Robin to play with. I'm not going to be going too much into that, simply because there's another movie that's about, it's not a Disney movie, it's outside of Disney, that's about just like growing up as Christopher Robin, where it's, he's very much in the public eye, unfortunately, as a child, because of the books that his father wrote. And from that, we get the books, all the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. What they did for the movie itself, for the 1977 release, was they had the three specials, which had a fair number of the same voice actors for most of the roles. Sterling Holloway voiced Winnie the Pooh, and there were, a few other ones that I'll go into that had done the other characters. The one character that definitely changed the most in regards to who voiced it was, of course, Christopher Robin, because that's recorded over the, those Christopher Robin character, or the boy that played Christopher Robin, of course, each time grew up. One of the ones was the son of Wolfgang Reitherman, Wooly Reitherman, who's one of Disney's 9 Old Men. I mentioned him various times before. He was, I think, one of the directors for the Winnie the Pooh movies, and his son, one of his sons, was one of the voices for Christopher Robin, and then there were other ones that, of course, did the other two subsequent voices over the course of those years, in between all the recordings of them. And so the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is framed in, of course, the storybook format. It opens with the showing of a little boy's bedroom, which is like, this could be the bedroom of any little boy anywhere, but this is the bedroom of Christopher Robin. And so it's based around, these are all the stories about the stuffed animals that Christopher Robin has. As far as we can tell, the only creature in the 100-Acre Wood that the main cast interact with the most that is not a stuffed animal is Owl, because Winnie the Pooh is a stuffed teddy bear. Kanga and Roo are stuffed kangaroos. Rabbit, okay, Rabbit is a real animal, because he's not, sewn together. We don't see him like stitched together or anything like that. Although he is, of course, based off of a stuffed rabbit. Not the Velveteen Rabbit, that's different. There's Tigger, who does seem to be a stuffed animal of a kind. Then there is, of course, Eeyore, who we see his stitches, of course, and of course he has his tail that constantly falls off. That's usually, something that results in the others having to help him find his tail, in various cases, which I'll get to later. Then, of course, there is Piglet, who in some cases looks like Piglet could be a little, stuffed pig that they've, sewn together, and then other cases could be a real pig. But Winnie the Pooh is very obviously a stuffed bear, because at various points in time we see him, bend over or something like that, and he gets like a rip in his side, and he just, tightens it all back up and everything, puts his stuffing away when he eats too much honey. So of course the first part of the Christopher Robin and the Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, that came out in 1866. The first part of it is framed in, Pooh wants honey, of course. So we get all the introductions of it. We have all the characters, and of course the layout of the 100-Acre Woods we see, because we have, of course, I'm not going to go through the entire song, but we have Christopher Robin, of course. We have Rabbit. We have Piglet. We have Kanga and Roo. We have Eeyore. We have Owl. We have Tigger. And we have Winnie the Pooh. And he's a willy-nilly, silly old bear. The songs for these ones, of course, are all written by the Sherman Brothers, who I have mentioned before. They did Mary Poppins and Jungle Book and a few other Disney movies over the course of the years. They've done quite a few. I very much enjoy their music, and they've been brought back at various points in time to, I think, help with other Disney movies along the line. But of course, they want new people to help with being able to write the songs. But if they want that feel, I think they go back to either previous songs the Sherman Brothers have written for the other movies that didn't end up getting used. And, so that's kind of where that came from. So we get all of, Pooh Bear is, of course, what Winnie the Pooh is usually called. It's either Pooh or Pooh Bear, depending on who's talking. And so we get a lot of, him trying to figure out ways of getting honey. He tries climbing a tree that has bees in it to try to get honey from the bees. They attack him. He runs off. He goes to Christopher Robin, where we get, of course, Christopher Robin gives him a balloon, and then Pooh rolls around in mud, and then he tries to float up. And he's like, I'm a little black rain cloud trying to, trying to trick the bees. I'm like, I'm sorry, Pooh, the bees are smarter than that. And of course, eventually it ends up resulting in Pooh going to visit Rabbit and eating a lot of the honey that Rabbit had, all of Rabbit's honey, getting too big, and then, of course, getting stuck. And Pooh is unfortunately stuck in Rabbit's door. Well, front door, which is a burrow. It was a hole. And that results in, of course, everyone trying to pull him out, and that doesn't work. And then we're introduced to a new character to the actual books. There's a double meaning for this, and I'll get to it for the character. The character that they introduce is a gopher. And he's a little bit based on the beaver character from Lady and the Tramp, as only still has like that whistling and the buck teeth and everything that he goes into when he's talking. I don't think he was voiced by the same guy that voiced the beaver in 101 Dalmatians. There's no beaver in 101 Dalmatians, sorry, in Lady and the Tramp. But he is based on that same concept of, the whistling teeth and everything. And what had happened was, as I stated at the beginning, Winnie the Pooh is, of course, is very much based in Britain, is very much a British icon at that time. And to make it a little bit more, to introduce it to an American audience, that's what it was broken up into three specials as opposed to one long movie. They broke it into three sections. And they made the gopher character, who's very much an American character. Talks about, it's just like the scene with the gopher is funny in of itself. But the way that they got around the fact that they're introducing this new character was, and I love that they did this, and I didn't catch this, or I caught this when I watched the movie, but I'm like, I just find it so funny because it's like a double meaning. Because what happens is, the gopher shows up to try to, help get Pooh out of there. And what ends up happening, or try to dig Pooh out. And he tells, Owl is there trying to figure out how to get Pooh out of the hole that he's stuck in Rabbit's house, of course. And the gopher pops up, and it's kind of like the whole, like a sales pitch, like, oh, well, it's, trying to give estimates and everything for, like, well, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, and he gives him a card. And he says, I'm not in the book. And he gives Owl this card. It says, I'm not in the book. As in, I'm not in the phone book. But it's a double meaning in the fact that the gopher is not in the Winnie the Pooh books. Which I just find that so clever. It's like, well, he's not in the books. And then, like, they reiterate that at the end when the gopher leaves. And he's like, well, I hope you got my card. And he, like, leaves. And then, like, Pooh, and Pooh goes, well, he did say he wasn't in the book. which I just find that so funny and cute. And so we get a bit of that interaction. We have to Pooh and all the others have to wait a while for Pooh to lose enough weight. So that means no feeding the bear. And he finally gets enough weight to the point where loses enough weight to the point where he budges a little bit, and then they all just together and they all pull him out. And then of course they're all happy. And then I like how they do this because they made it episodic, and the way that they tied all three of the pieces together to form one full movie is we get extra bits, because when they so they aired them all separately, of course, in the beginning, and then when they put them all together as one, they brought back in Sterling Holloway, who played Winnie the Pooh, and I'll remember I have his name listed in the a section where I marked down the names for the actors that were in the original movies, and it's the narrator of the Winnie the Pooh movies is Sebastian Cabot, who I know he was in. I know he's an actor, but I don't exactly remember 100% what he done else as an actor off the top of my head. But was Sebastian Cabot, which there's probably people who was like, I know exactly who Sebastian Cabot is. How dare you not know who he is? But it's like, I have a vague idea of who he is. I just don't remember exactly off the top of my head. Sorry. My head's filled with Disney facts at the moment. That doesn't mean I always remember what's going on with that. And what ends up happening is they made little extra bits to, interstitial between, like they flip the page and talk to Pooh, and like they make the book a part of the actual story. So as you watch the characters move from one page to the next, or you have, one of the characters, like the narrator says, his head was stuck at the top of page, 30, and his, bottom was stuck at the bottom of page 33, or whatever whatever setup they do for that. And I just find that so cute. And so they work their way through that, and that's how they made, they wove all three stories together. And then you move into Winnie the Pooh and the Blistery Day, which, Gopher tells Winnie the Pooh that it's a Wednesday. So he goes around, that results in like Owl's house gets knocked over. And then like they're all trying to find a new place for Owl to live, and there's like this big rainstorm that happens, and we get introduced to Tigger in this one, and he bounces everybody. Tigger unfortunately causes a lot of problems for everyone, particularly Rabbit, which of course it's the theory. One of the theories is that each of the characters represent something. Tigger is hyperactive, Rabbit is controlling, Owl is a windbag, Piglet is terrified of so many things, Pooh is, hunger and gluttony, but he's also very simple and sweet in that concept of, he's a bear of very little brain, as of course they always say for Winnie the Pooh. But unfortunately, there's a lot of things that go on with that, and Pooh, they're all supposed to represent different things. Is and like Eeyore is depression, and like Kanga is like the mother and such. But it's a little bit less. I don't necessarily always see it as that way. I think it was just the characters are just based on what Christopher Robin wanted them to be when he was playing with them as a kid. And it's everybody give well, maybe not everybody, but like a lot of people will give stuffed animals that they have that's either it's the story behind Winnie the Pooh is that he was a stuffed bear that was given to Christopher Robin on his first birthday, and therefore Pooh is a year younger than Christopher Robin because that's when he got him. And we watch it's the whole thing of they represent the innocence of childhood. You can be there are adults that are controlling, but then you also have the adults that are nice and friendly, and then all these other things that you got to represent. Innocence. That's kind of what the 100-Acre Woods and what Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore and Tigger and all of that represented was innocence. There's elements of that, like you can be sad at times, you can be hyperactive at times, you can be scared at times, you can be in regards to comparison to like, well, Pooh, not kids don't know everything, you still have to learn, and then of course there's you know, a kid looking at like an older person who very much talks a lot and just, you know, whoa, 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 you know, the way the owl does, you know, big words that they don't understand and just, you know, all that type of stuff. You know, you still see that, but they're still friends with the person. And so, you know, we get all that, they, you know, and that's where we're introduced to Tigger, of course, in the blustery day, and he explains about heffalumps and woozles. And then there's this big heffalumps and woozles song that pretty much just kind of take, you know, pink elephants for all intents and purposes from Dumbo, and you kind of get the heffalumps and woozles song, only it's about, you know, heffalumps, which is a play off an elephant, and then woozles or weasels, you know, and so we're introduced to them. And then, you know, at through the course of the episode, you know, Piglet, you know, there's this flood that happens in the 100-acre wood, and they all kind of make their way back to, you know, Christopher Robin's house, and, you know, Pooh saves Piglet, and then they find, you know, Owl a place to live, which ends up being Piglet's house, unfortunately. But then Piglet gives him the house, and then because of, you know, Piglet's generosity, they have like a 2-hero party where, you know, Piglet and Pooh are, you know, the heroes because, you know, Pooh saved Piglet during the storm, and then, you know, Piglet, you know, generosity gave up his house for, you know, our Owl can now live in the house, and, you know, Piglet now lives with Winnie the Pooh. And then, of course, they still do like a transition into the next story, which is, you know, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2. And we see how much of a problem Tigger can be for the other characters. You know, he bounces Pooh, he bounces Rabbit and destroys a bunch of Rabbit's food. And, you know, him and Roo are hopping around all over the place, and they get like stuck up a tree. And another way that I love how they make this part of how they make the book dynamic part of the movie, and I love how they did this, is Tigger is up in the tree, and they're all trying to get him to jump down because he's, you know, Tigger jumped too high and now he's stuck in the tree. And, you know, Roo jumped down and Roo's fine, but Tigger is still stuck up in the tree. So what the narrator kind of introduces himself, and like Tigger talks to the narrator. I mean, we've had Pooh talk to the narrator a few times throughout the course of the story, but now we have Tigger talking to the narrator. And Tigger is like, well, if you're the narrator, then help me get down or whatever. And like, so you see as the screen turns, and it's like the book is turning, and it's like, so the book is now set so that way you see this paragraph underneath Tigger, the side of the paragraph underneath Tigger, and then you see him still clung to the tree, and then he like gently turns and he pokes a paragraph, and then he can fall, and then he can get under the paragraph, and then they tilt the book a bit, and then he slides down the paragraph. And I just find that so funny as a way of like, you make the characters in the book interact with the book. And there's other points in time throughout the course of the movie, and they do this in other Winnie the Pooh media as well. In other Winnie the Pooh movies that they've done, I think, to a degree, where as you pull out and they're moving to the next part, you watch the pages turn in the book. And I just find that so great of like, you work that in as an element of the movie and of the animation and as the story. And that's, I've said it, I've said it again, of course, it's great. And then what ends up happening is the way that they ended it, you know, the end of the movie, or the end of the original special, the Tigger one, is that, you know, they all, you know, Tigger had made the promise that if he ever gets down, he's never going to bounce again. And of course, Rabbit tries to hold him to that once he's down. But then everybody's like, but the Tigger that liked to bounce was better. And then, you know, it was like happier and everything. And then like Rabbit relents. And then, you know, so then Tigger can bounce again. So they're all bouncing all over the place and having fun, and, you know, and Rabbit's happy too. And then we end up getting this bit where it's, you know, Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh together. And that's more designed as a way to finish up the movie. And it's just a small little bit that they added on at the end when they released it as a compilation movie as all ones together. And what it is called just the House Pooh Corner, which is just like, you know, Pooh has different places all over the, you know, he has his thinking spot, and he has his house and everything. And it's just Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh that they have for this. And it shows the two of them walking around and talking, and, you know, as we get them, you know, aimlessly wandering around and talking about nothing. And we get Tigger or not Tigger, none of the others are there, just Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh. And we have where they're discussing that, you know, Christopher Robin has to go off to school, and he has to go off and learn things. And he has to learn about the alphabet and about math and about geography and all this other stuff. And like they do kind of show the other characters, like they show the pages of like the other characters like singing about the alphabet and looking at math and like looking at like at this globe that they have. And and then we see Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh, and they're talking about like, well, like what are we gonna, doing nothing and everything. And then we have it where Pooh asked Christopher Robin, um, what, well, when you're 100, how old will I be? And Christopher Robin goes 99. As reference to the bear is a year younger than Christopher Robin was in real life. And then we get that where the book moves to the last page and it pulls out and it's just the page. And I'm going to actually read you what was on the page at the end of the movie. Just give me 1 second while I pull that up. So here we have the last page of what's in the original, many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And it's the concept of, when Christopher Robin leaves, would Pooh still come back to like their special place? And and Pooh says yes, and it's wherever they go and whatever happens to them on the way, in that enchanted place at the top of the forest, a little bear will always be waiting. And one of the interviews that they have as one of the special features on the DVD is they talk to one of the boys who had done the boy who had been able to do the final bit for Christopher Robin for that part. John Wamsley is what it says here. Walmsley, sorry. Who's an actor on something else. Had been like a child actor at that time. So, he is the voice of Christopher Robin for this part. And we get what happens, and he says that, when he was reading that part, he was actually choking up, because it's the concept of, as you grow up, you do kind of leave your childhood behind. You leave behind, supposedly, all the stuff that gave you joy. Not necessarily like you're never going to have joy again, but the fact that you can't go back to as innocent of a days. At least not for a while, until maybe you have your own kids. And then you get to help remember. They get to help you remember what it was like to be that kid. Which is, I think, a good lesson that I think a lot of us need to learn, and that I need to remember it a bit more when it comes to other kids that I'm around at time, with how fascinating they can be about the smallest, fascinated they can be with the smallest things. And we see that more in the live action Winnie the Pooh, the live action Christopher Robin movie that they had with Ewan McGregor, which I'll get to toward the end of this. I'll get to that one, but I've got a few of the other Winnie the Pooh movies that I have to go through first. So it's shown that no matter how far you go from your childhood, you can always come back to it in a way. Which, I think that's a good thing. I think that that's a very good thing, to always be able to know that you can come back to your childhood. Whether that childhood meant, stuffed animals and roaming around in the forest, or whether that was books, or whether that was video games and like, later generations like now, or whether that's, whatever else it was that you had done as a child that, brought you joy, whether that was, Disney movies or other types of animation, or other just movies or TV shows in general, that, you can still come back to that. You may not always remember it the same, and you may learn something new, but it's there. You can always go back to it. As I mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about the voice actors. So as I said, Sterling Holloway voices Pooh and all of them. He was also Cheshire Cat, and Cheshire Cat from, of course, Alice in Wonderland, and Caw from, Jungle Book, which is just a very odd thing in your head where it's like, huh, okay, I'll buy the Cheshire Cat thing. The Winnie the Pooh being Caw is just weird. Yeah, there's a lot of other ones that, pop up in the other, a few of the other ones. Paul Winchell played Tigger. There's a bunch of other ones where it's just, Barbara Luddy, who I've mentioned in a few other previous things. She played Kanga. There's a few other ones that pop up every now and then that that popped up in other Disney movies, or however the case may go for other characters. As I said, it was the three different pieces, and then they bring them together. And of course, we have, the Winnie the Pooh song. Then we have, the Wonderful Thing About Tiggers song, which is so cute. And then, of course, over the years, they've done quite a few other Winnie the Pooh movies. There was Winnie the Pooh and the Day for Eeyore, which came out in 1980 or 1983. Yeah. I probably have seen this one at some point, but I just don't remember. I think it's just more like, I think I saw something about the summary being like, Eeyore has like a birthday party, or they throw a birthday party for Eeyore when he gets presents, and just to help to make Eeyore happy. And then there's Pooh's Grand Adventure, The Search for Christopher Robin, which I remember this one. I do remember this one. It came out in 1997, so it came out when I was about 5. And what it is Christopher Robin leaves a note for them that says, "I've gone to school, I'll be back, later," type thing. And they take the note to Owl, who tries to read it and unfortunately gets it very sticky and misreads it and thinks it's a skull and all this other, I've been, taken by skull or whatever. And so they think it's a, letter to come and help save Christopher Robin. And then they, they go and they try to find the skull, and it's like also, and then like Christopher Robin explains, "I've gone to school, I'll be back later," type thing, once they eventually find him while he shows up from school. And then of course there was the Tigger movie in 2000, which is, a little bit more about, you learn more about Tigger because, he's the only one, and I think that starts to bother him that he's the only one. And then there's Piglet's Big Movie, which I don't remember ever watching the Tigger movie or Piglet's Big Movie. I might watch them someday. They're probably on Disney Plus. And then there was Pooh's Heffalump movie, which came out in 2005, which is where it's explained that no, not all heffalumps are bad. And then of course, and then there was the Winnie the Pooh that came out in 2011, which I watched as well to go along with this one because that was the other one that I had, which has Jim Cummings as Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. Jim Cummings has been in so many different Disney movies and animated series. Just look him up and just look over his resume. When I ever get around to doing my like voice actors, beyond like the anime voice actors, Jim Cummings is going to be one of the ones that I talk about for like what else they've done, because he can do the Winnie the Pooh voice, he can do the Caw voice, he can do the Cheshire Cat voice, he can do all those different ones that Sterling Holloway had been able to do. And we get I just find this so cute because the narrator for the Winnie the Pooh for 2011 was John Cleese, and he interacts with the characters just like they did before. And then we have Craig Ferguson, so the Late Show with Craig Ferguson, or whatever else you've seen him in, Drew Carey Show, whatever. He played Owl. And I remember, because I watched Craig Ferguson at the time, I watched the Late Show at the time, and I still do, but I watched it at the time when he was when he was the host, and he talked about getting to be Owl in it, and I just thought that was so funny. It was just like, he played Owl, and he did a spot-on job, in my opinion. Spot-on job for Owl. And, he's very boisterous and over the top and everything for the way the Owl talks. And just like the story of it is, it kind of goes through a few different things. They try to find Eeyore a good tail because he loses it, and it just loops back around to everything. But kind of the beat on it is that, Pooh went through the whole thing trying to find honey, but he didn't find honey, but he ended up finding Eeyore's tail, and he has to take Eeyore's tail back to Eeyore to do the right thing. And so it's just like fun things that they do with that. Then there was the Christopher Robin movie here, which came out in 2017, which starred Ewan McGregor as a grown-up Christopher Robin. As I mentioned, there was another Christopher Robin movie that came out at around the same time that was about Christopher Robin. He was a kid, the real-life Christopher Robin, growing up with all the A.A. Milne books and everything that were around him. So this is actually supposed to be like the Christopher Robin from the actual books, not the real-life one, the book one, who's all grown up now. And he's, the beginning of the movie just starts off with, them all being together and him having to get ready to go off to school. So they're all giving him gifts and everything to remind him of them. And, him and Pooh talking, this, kid version of Christopher Robin. And then they go off, and then, Christopher Robin goes off and he grows up. and he has a wife who's played by Haley Atwell, so Peggy Carter if you watch Marvel, and they have a daughter who is adorable and whose name's Madeline. His wife's name is Evelyn. Christopher Robin was in a war, which, given the time frame for when the books originally happened, and then Christopher Robin would have been growing up, makes sense. I think for the time frame that it landed, I think it was World War One, but I will double check when I'm going through this, and I will put it up here whether or not it was World War One or World War Two war type thing. And then it's, a few years later, and he's very much this business type character, business orientated character, and he is trying to, he works at this company that makes luggage, and his wife and his daughter were like, well, we're gonna go away to like this cottage where he grew up when he was a kid. It's on the land where he grew up, and he's supposed to, he was supposed to come with them, but then work dictated that he couldn't go. And it's, the story of the course of the movie is supposed to be him realizing that he needs to be with his family. Yes, work is important, but he needs to spend time with his wife and his daughter. She's going to grow up and not have an appreciation for a lot of different things. And they just got a great cast for this movie because they also have like Mark Gatiss, who, if you've, he's done a lot of British stuff. He's been in Doctor Who multiple times. He was in Being Human, I think, from the BBC version of it. He's been in a lot of other British shows. So Mark Gatiss did a great job. He plays like the son of the owner of the luggage company that's called Winslow. And when Pooh hears it, he hears woozle, so he thinks that they're woozles. And so like Christopher Robin ends up interacting, like Pooh comes through this tree right in Christopher Robin's neighborhood where he's an adult. And then Christopher Robin then has to like take Pooh back to the 100-acre woods. And that results in like him getting to see everybody again, but then there's like this whole time delay and everything, and he has to get back and everything. Like, Jim Cummings played, Jim Cummings, as I said, still played Winnie the Pooh at the time because he's played Winnie the Pooh for quite a while. You get Brad Garrett as Eeyore. You get a whole bunch of others. You get Peter Capaldi, so another Doctor Who character in there, as Rabbit. Toby Jones, another Doctor Who reference, another Marvel reference, Harry Potter reference. He played Dobby in Harry Potter. He played the Dream Lord in an episode of Doctor Who. He plays, I think it's Ian Zola, weird tiny scientist guy from the Captain America movies, who that worked for the Red Skull and founded Hydra and everything. So he plays that. He played Owl, and they just do a great job with it. And I love how they arranged the characters for who they picked for it. And and the guy that they had played Eeyore in like the animated one for the 2011 one did a great job as well. He was just great. And then there's outside of the canon stuff they've done, like they've had like a various other animated series, of course, that they've done for Winnie the Pooh over the years. Computer animated versions of a series that's just called The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh or whatever, that was on Disney Channel at some point. Then we have them popping up in House of Mouse, which I just think is cute. Them showing up here, and then this other one here with Pooh and a bunch of different types of honeycomb, I guess. And then I guess this is going to be a shorter video because then we got this part here about Kingdom Hearts, and then that just kind of finishes this up. Winnie the Pooh in Kingdom Hearts. The story of Winnie the Pooh for Kingdom Hearts is that it is throughout the course of the first game, you come across all these different pages that are a part of the 100-Acre Woods book. And you take the book, or you take all the pages back to Merlin, who has the book. It's his job to safeguard it. And he will, put all the pages back in, and then as you put in more and more pages, you get interact with other characters. Like you interact with Pooh at the beginning, and he's like, all my, everybody's gone, and I don't know where they went. And, you slowly bring everybody back. You bring back Kinga and Roo and Tigger and Piglet and Owl and Rabbit and Eeyore. I think I said Rabbit twice, but whatever. You bring all of them back, and then you have to do like there's a lot of little mini games in the world for the most part. There's I think at some point you have to fight something of the Heartless in the Winnie the Pooh world for the original one. Um, but not too much, and it's just mostly like little mini games that you can do. Like you have to bounce around with like Tigger and do different things there, and help Rabbit with his garden and prevent Tigger from like hopping on all the vegetables. um, when you get into Kingdom Hearts 2, you get a little bit more of a tearjerker with that, because at the end of the first Kingdom Hearts, or at the end of the Hundred Acre Wood section of the first Kingdom Hearts, you after everything's all fixed in the Hundred Acre Woods, you've beaten everything in the Hundred Acre Woods. Not like over the top beat it, but you beat the games, you played each of the games, and you won within whatever amount of time frame that was necessary. Like help Pooh get honey, but like he floats up on the balloon, and you have to pop or knock the bees away so he can get honey, and you have to like help Pooh with other things. And it's just a cute way to interact with all the characters, and you interact, I think, with each one of the different Winnie the Pooh characters. I think even the Gopher's there, if I remember correctly, for the first one. And we have where you pull out, and the book is now, it's like usually if you look at a Winnie the Pooh book, and these two are not the best example because they don't have it on there, but I think one of the original Winnie the Pooh books was like Christopher Robin walking away, and then has Winnie the Pooh next to him, and they're holding hands. And in this case, it's Sora and Winnie the Pooh, which if I can find a picture that's that version of it, I will use it. And then you have in Kingdom Hearts 2, you have them go back to the Hundred Acre Woods, but it's a bunch of Heartless stole more of the pages, and that stole Pooh's memory. So then you have to get back all the rest of the pages, of course, from the Heartless by defeating different things, and you put them all back together in the Hundred Acre Woods, and that helps Pooh remember everybody and remember Sora. And there's more mini games that you deal with, and you get more prizes, of course. And this time Donald and Goofy can go in. The first time around it's just Sora that goes in. Now it's Donald and Goofy that can go in as well, and you interact with all of them. And as it pulls out, like you have this part here shows like the book with like the torn cover and everything, and then once it's all better, then you have this part where it's all the covers better, and you have Sora and Pooh and Tigger and whoever else. And then in Kingdom Hearts 3, it is mostly just it's mini games in Kingdom Hearts 3. You have, like, do something where you have to like get a whole bunch of different food and vegetables and flowers and everything like that in like Rabbit's Garden. It's pretty much all takes place in like Rabbit's Garden, but the others pop up, and the Heffalumps there. So these are like them from like Kingdom Hearts 3, which is still pretty cute. Not too much that happens with that. You don't do too much with them in like Birth by Sleep. You don't do anything, I don't think, with them or too much with Birth by Sleep. You have like Merlin's there, drops 100 Acre Woods while you're walking home, or whatever. You interact with the book a little bit, but I don't think you go into the book. I think you just give the book back to Merlin at some point, or it ends up back with Merlin somehow. Dream Drop Distance, not really there beyond like memories that pop up. It's not too much that happens with it, unfortunately. They pop up a little bit in like Chain of Memories. You run through the 100 Acre Woods world, and it's basically just like this easy world that you can go through and get materials and items and potions and health and whatever else that's going to help you later on in the game. And then, of course, you end up with a book, and it goes to Merlin. By the end of the whole series, the book is with Merlin, and it's safe. And all the Winnie the Pooh characters are all safe. It's just supposed to be you kind of take the place of Christopher Robin a little bit for the Kingdom Hearts. I don't think Christopher Robin popped up in the Kingdom Hearts as far as I was aware, but I could be wrong on that one. This is definitely going to be one of the shorter videos because I'm only at like 40 minutes now in recording, and I have a little bit of editing that's going to get cut out, so that'll chop it down a little bit, but that just makes it easier for me for editing. Yay. Yeah, whatever. So next up on the roster for Disney movies, would be The Rescuers, which I like The Rescuers movies. I haven't quite decided if I'm just gonna pair them all together and just do The Rescuers and Rescuers Down Under on the same video. I have not made that decision yet. I might, because that's kind of the first one because I kind of combine like all the Winnie the Pooh ones together in this. Simply because both of the Winnie the Pooh movies that I was talking about, I think, did get like theatrical releases. And then I think both of the Rescuers movies got theatrical releases, but they were released, 10, 15, 20 years apart for the Rescuers, for the original Rescuers and then Rescuers Down Under. But we'll see how I do with that one. I haven't decided if they're going to be on the same video or not. It depends on how much information there is about the original and about the sequel for when I'm going through and doing all my research and rewatching them. But yeah, next up would be Rescuers. I've got a bunch of bears and a tiger. That's what I got here. I don't have a giant pot of honey. Sorry, no giant pots of honey in this house. Unfortunately, that makes Pooh sad. Although I think it would be kind of interesting to watch my dog try to eat honey, but I don't think that would be a good idea because he would just get covered in honey or he wouldn't eat it. We tried to give him peanut butter in a jar and he's just like, no, I don't want that. Why would I want that? So, yeah. Speaking of dog, he just walked by the door where I'm in the door to the room. So I think that's my cue to say I gotta go. So that's what we got here. Just, some of my favorite quotes first from Winnie the Pooh is, silly old bear, and Pooh, think, which I've definitely done. Don't really know too much beyond that. I mean, there's, oh, bother, that he says all the time, and T-I double gut-er, and TTFN, ta-ta for now, which is actually an improvised line. Paul Winchell, who did Tigger for Winnie the Pooh, for the original Tigger, which I think he played Tigger for quite a while, and then Jim Cummings took over when he took over Pooh, because he could do both voices. Jim Cummings is just awesome. Look up Jim Cummings, as I said. I'll definitely end up doing a video about him at some point. But Paul Winchell, who did the original Tigger, who had done a bunch of other Disney voices as well, he did the original Tigger. They had just been recording and everything, and at some point he had said that, he just kind of ad-libbed the TTFN, ta-ta for now, which I'm like, okay. I'm okay with this. Walt Disney had actually been the one to decide to do it episodically for the Winnie the Pooh movies, because Winnie the Pooh is not a huge character over here in the States the way that like Mickey was or whatever. It was very big in London, in England and the UK and Europe, but it wasn't as big in the States. So that's why they just did the first episode, the Winnie the Pooh and the Honey True, and then once that very much made it very big here, and then it got bigger and bigger, and that was Walt's idea. Unfortunately, he passed away before Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day came out, and then they still ended up doing, of course, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, which the movies are just a good way of, the characters don't really lie to each other. You can't really hide each other's, they can't really hide their feelings from each other in regards to the Winnie the Pooh characters, which I just think is a sweet way of doing that. So, I think that's what we've got. And if you've seen any Winnie the Pooh to a degree, you may have been able to figure out what the quote's going to be at the end of the video. But some of you might be right, some of you might be wrong. We'll find out. You'll find out in a moment. But that's what I got. Next up will be Rescuers. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think.